let's move on to the markets now. The BRVM 10 index closed the session on Tuesday at 208 points, down about 0.3%. Meanwhile, the all-share index, the BRVM composite, also fell back in trading on the day. Moving on to Ghana, we saw the GSE composite index closing at 1,800, that's down marginally 0.02%, and while the Nigerian market was up about 1%, really on the back of gains we saw in Dangote Cement. Let's now cross to Diamond Bank, where Luqman Agboola is standing by to give us some perspective on how that market is trading, and with a particular focus on the oil and gas space. Luqman, thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking a lot about the subsidies, and I want to get your thoughts on the latest on that. Clearly, we've seen some progress. Some payments have been made. This has a huge bearing on the downstream petroleum sector in Nigeria. Can you talk to us about what is going on now?
Yeah, nothing much is really happening in this space. We expect that this month the outstanding subsidy payments will be made. Of course, the allocation for Q2 are out, and the marketers are making arrangements to import their respective cargoes. But one interesting thing that is actually happening in the downstream space is the fact that Dangote has announced that Dangote Group has announced that there is going to be a refinery valued at costing about 8 billion that's going to be on stream shortly. That's an interesting news, because if that comes on stream, that is going to really reduce the quantity of petroleum product, refined petroleum products that are going to be imported into the Nigerian economy. And that means we are going to be able to conserve a whole lot of foreign exchange, which hitherto being used to pay for imports. Now, I think what that says is that Dangote Group...
Does it make sense to build a refinery, given the fact that prices are regulated in this country right now?
Yeah, I think the way to look at it is this. What are those things that those countries that refine, what are those things that are being done right? They are still in business, they are still doing business. Nigerian companies and Nigerian government is still importing petroleum products from those countries. Why don't we sit down and look at the things they are doing right? My own understanding is the fact that there could be some kind of economy of scale if there are refineries here, because I know there is tax holiday. I also know that cost of labor is not as high as in those countries. Now, if we look at it from that point of view, I think it makes a whole lot of sense for all the stakeholders to come together, especially the companies that are currently benefiting from that subsidy and all that. Let them come together and work together and see what we can do about
all right, so in other words, are you suggesting, for instance, that instead of paying the subsidies to the individual companies, if we set up a refinery, then the government pays the subsidy to the refinery, if you like?
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. When you localize the production of these petroleum products, it makes a whole lot of sense here. Right. Now, you are going to employ people, you are going to pay tax. There is going to be a whole lot of employment that's going to be generated through that. And I think subsidy payment is going to be better monitored when you pay through local refineries. I mean, it is easy for you to determine what was produced. And for any reason, if you overpay, you can easily claw back, rather than chasing people all about and asking them to bring what they've been overpaid that you may never get. But if you are paying that same subsidy to local refineries, of course, it is a business that is going to be there for a very long time. So if you overpaid any subsidy payment, I mean, it is something you can recover over time, rather than what we are currently having. So my take is, I think it's high time the marketers come together and look at some kind of synergy that is going to see to it that refineries come up in Nigeria.
And perhaps also, something for the policymakers to also think about. Okay, so let's move on to the upstream sector, M&A activity in that space. Can you give us an update? Of course, we're hearing news about British Heritage Oil looking to acquire assets in Nigeria.
Yes, there is a whole lot going on in that space currently. Of course, which is not new, but I think the good thing is that the Nigerian operators are also coming together to synergize, to work together. But I don't think we are going to see M&A as such. In the E&P space, as a matter of fact, what you see mostly is what we call farm in and farm out. You know, some guys will come into an existing asset and take a stake in it, and there are variants of that that is currently going on. So I think we are going to see a whole lot of that kind of arrangement rather than MIA in that space, and I think that is already happening.
And particularly with respect to the marginal fields, what I'm hearing as well is that the government is threatening to revoke some of those licenses because they are not being developed. Are we likely to hear about any deals in that space that could perhaps provide the funding needed to develop those fields?
Yes, one of the problems over time has been the issue of funding, really. And another challenge you also have in that space is the fact that some of the data you have not really been reliable, but I think we have gone past that. We have local consulting firms that have been able to do a whole lot of good job at determining what the reserves in these marginal fields are, and they have been very accurate to a large extent. Now, what that tells you is that it gives the banks some kind of comfort to say we have some information that will guide us in providing funding for these fields. Don't also forget that before now, the Nigerian banks are not familiar with that terrain, but with the shell divestment and subsequent funding of those assets, we have seen a whole lot of activities in the marginal space, in the marginal field space. We've seen banks coming on board to fund many of these assets. And we've also seen existing companies coming in to support those local companies that have those assets by farming into those assets and assisting them to develop them.